You ever notice how silence says more than words ever could? How not reacting reveals everything? You think staying quiet is weakness, that ignoring someone means you're backing down. But really, it's the strongest move you'll ever make, because silence is uncomfortable. It forces people to fill in the blanks, to show who they really are without your input. You ever ignore someone long enough and they start to unravel, don't they? They get nervous, they get loud, they get messy, because your attention was their cover, and now that it's gone, they don't know what to do. See, people don't like being ignored, not because it hurts their feelings, but because it takes away their control. They need your reaction. They feed off it. It keeps their game going. But when you go quiet, when you stop explaining, stop defending, stop chasing, they panic. They expose themselves without even realizing it. The sweet talk turns sour. The fake support fades. The loyalty that was always conditional, it disappears the moment you stop giving. And that's when you start to see it, the truth. They never cared. Not really. They just liked what you gave them. Your time, your energy, your kindness, your patience. But when that stops, so do they. And it's not just silence that reveals them. It's what they do when you stop giving them access. The ones who used to check in suddenly forget your number. The ones who always needed you now act like they never knew you. And in that silence, you get clarity. Because silence is a filter. It separates the genuine from the users, the loyal from the opportunists, the real from the role players. And the best part, you don't have to do anything. Just stop engaging, stop arguing, stop trying to prove your worth, and watch how quickly the truth comes crawling out. Because the more you ignore them, the more they reveal exactly who they are. When you stop giving people access to you, it messes with them. Not because they miss you, but because they miss what they were taking from you. Your energy, your validation, your attention, that constant stream of effort you kept pouring into someone who gave you barely anything back. The moment that stops, they start to crack. They'll act confused, offended, maybe even angry. They'll twist the story, call you cold, say you changed. But deep down, they know they were exposed, and they hate it, because ignoring someone who feeds off others is like cutting off their oxygen. They can't stand it. They need an audience. They need a reaction. If they can't control how you see them, they'll try to control how others see you. That's when the whispers start. That's when the lies begin. All because you had the nerve to stop playing along. You'll notice it fast. The ones who once called you their rock suddenly turn bitter. The ones who said they'd always be there are the first to vanish. And the ones who swore they had your back, they're the ones aiming for your spine the moment you turn around. But here's the thing, they were always like that. You just didn't see it because you were too busy proving your worth to people who never deserved it. Now they don't know what to do. Your silence creates a void they can't fill, and that terrifies them. Because for the first time, they're being seen without the mask. No performance, no spotlight, just the truth. And the truth, it's ugly. They'll try to provoke you, try to pull you back into the drama, accuse you of being fake, disloyal, heartless. But that's not about you. That's about their need to stay in control. You took back your power, and now they're spiraling. That's what ignoring does. It forces people to deal with the version of themselves they've been hiding. And not everyone can handle that. Let them unravel, let them talk, let them scramble to rewrite the story. It doesn't matter anymore, because you're not in that story now. You walked away, and they're stuck in a narrative they can't control. That's what happens when you ignore them long enough. They expose themselves. You saw the signs, didn't you? You felt the shift, the small red flags, the off comments, the way they only showed up when it was convenient, but you brushed it off. You made excuses. You wanted to believe the best in them. That was your first mistake. You cared too much. You believed too hard. You kept telling yourself, maybe they're just going through something. Maybe they didn't mean it like that. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But deep down, you knew. You just didn't want to accept it. Because accepting it meant letting go. And you weren't ready for that. Not yet. You wanted to be the one who stayed, the one who understood, the one who didn't give up when things got tough. And for a while, you convinced yourself that loyalty meant holding on, no matter how much it hurt. But the truth is, loyalty doesn't mean setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. It doesn't mean shrinking yourself to make someone else comfortable. You gave and gave, thinking maybe if you loved harder, tried more, forgave quicker, they'd finally see your worth. But they didn't, because they weren't looking, they weren't listening, they were just taking, and you were too busy loving them to notice how empty you were becoming. That's the part that hurts the most. Not what they did, not even how they did it, but the fact that you saw it coming and still stayed, the fact that you ignored your gut, silenced your own needs, and believed in someone who didn't deserve it. You weren't blind, you were hopeful, and sometimes hope is the most dangerous thing you can hold on to because it keeps you stuck in a cycle of giving second chances to people who should have never gotten a first. You thought you were being kind, being strong, but what you were really doing was betraying yourself over and over again, letting them get away with it, letting them write the rules, letting them treat you like an option while you treated them like a priority. And in the end, they left you drained, confused, hurt, not just because of what they did, but because you let them. And that's the part you carry. That's the wound that takes the longest to heal. The part where you realize you were the one holding the door open for your own destruction. But you're not weak, you're not stupid, you're not too soft. You're just someone who loved deeply, and they used that against you. There's a shift that happens when you stop explaining yourself. It's quiet at first, almost unnoticeable. But then everything changes, because when you stop defending your choices, stop justifying your boundaries, stop trying to make them understand, you take your power back. People don't like that, especially the ones who relied on your guilt to stay close, the ones who played innocent every time you called them out, the ones who made you feel bad for having standards, for expecting the bare minimum. See, when you were explaining yourself, they still had control. Every time you said, "I'm just trying to help," or "I didn't mean it like that," or "I'm only asking because I care," you were giving them access. You were letting them twist your intentions, letting them manipulate the narrative. But the moment you stop, that's when they start to squirm. Because silence doesn't give them anything to work with. No lines to twist. No reactions to feed on. No excuses to hide behind. It forces them to sit with what they've done. And most people can't handle that. They'd rather argue, shift blame, flip the script. But when you say nothing, when you walk away without a single word, it leaves them exposed. That's the beauty of detachment. You stop caring about proving your point. You stop hoping they'll see your side. You stop needing them to get it, because you finally do. You get that not everyone deserves an explanation. Some people already know what they did, they just don't care. And that's the hard truth. It's not that they didn't understand, it's that they never had the intention to respect you in the first place. They heard you, they just didn't value what you said, and now they've lost the chance to hear you ever again. When you stop explaining, you become unpredictable, untouchable. You stop being someone they can manipulate, and you become someone they can't figure out. And that terrifies them, because when they can't control your emotions, they realize they never really had you at all. And nothing scares a manipulator more than losing control. Your silence doesn't just disturb them, it destroys them. Because people like that, they count on you reacting. They depend on your emotional response to fuel their power. But when you stop responding, when you stop showing up for their chaos, everything starts falling apart. They start talking, spinning stories, painting you as the villain. Suddenly, you're the problem. You're the one who changed. You're cold now, distant, unrecognizable, but that's only because you finally saw them for who they are, and they can't stand that reflection. Your silence exposes everything they tried to hide. It removes the mask they wore so well, the charm, the kindness, the loyalty. All of it fades when they're no longer center stage, and they can't fake it without an audience. Without you there, giving them light, they lose their ability to shine, and that's when they start to self-destruct. They turn bitter, desperate. You'll see them reaching out to anyone who will listen, trying to rewrite the narrative, twisting the facts, dropping your name into conversations they shouldn't be in. Not because they miss you, but because they can't stand being irrelevant. They thought you'd come back, thought you'd break the silence, thought you'd miss them enough to reopen the door. But this time is different. This time you're not looking back. And they feel that. They feel the distance, the disconnect, the lack of access, and it eats at them more than anything. They lash out, they play victim, they try to bait you into reacting, but you don't. And that silence, it's louder than anything you could have said, because silence says, I'm done. Silence says, you don't deserve my energy. Silence says everything they don't want to hear. And the best part, you don't have to lift a finger. Let them talk, let them lie, let them scramble to convince the world that they were the ones who got hurt. Because deep down, they know the truth. And the people who matter, they'll see it too. Eventually, because the truth always finds its way out. And the louder they scream, the more obvious it becomes. The fallout of your silence is their unraveling. And all you had to do was walk away. There's a moment when they realize they can't reach you anymore. And that moment, that's when you become untouchable. It doesn't happen all at once. At first, they think it's temporary. They think you're just upset, that you'll cool down, that eventually you'll come back like you always did. But the longer the silence stretches, the more they start to understand. This time, you're really gone. And that's when the fear sets in, because for people who thrive on control, nothing is more terrifying than losing access. When they can't guilt you, can't charm you, can't drag you back into the same cycles, they realize the grip they had was an illusion, and illusions don't survive the truth. You're no longer answering texts, no longer explaining your silence, no longer defending your boundaries. You're just absent, not bitter, not angry, just done. That kind of peace, it's powerful, it's rare, and to them, it's unbearable. They can't manipulate peace, can't twist attachment. They don't know how to operate when they can't get a rise out of you, so they spiral. And you're just watching, calm, collected, clear. That's what makes you dangerous now. Not your rage, not your pain, but your indifference. Because when someone like you stops caring, it shakes the ground under people who built their identity on using you. You're not seeking revenge. You're not telling your side of the story. You're not trying to prove what happened. You just left. quietly, completely. And that silence, that's the loudest message of all. They lost something they'll never get back. Not just your time, not just your loyalty, but your presence, your light, your belief in them. Because when you believed in them, they felt powerful. And now they're left to face the emptiness that was always inside them. You didn't just walk away, you outgrew them. And now you exist in a space they can't touch. That's what it means to be untouchable. They always come back. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but they will. It starts with silence, then a like on an old post, a hey out of nowhere, a memory they suddenly want to bring up. And just like that, they're testing the waters, seeing if the door is still open. They don't return because they've changed. They return because they lost their grip, because they realized you were the one thing they couldn't replace. Not the version of you they pretended to care about, but the version that gave without asking, stayed without question, believed without proof. They missed the version of you that didn't see clearly, the version that excused everything, that forgave too fast, that loved too deeply. But that version doesn't exist anymore, so they come back wearing a new face, softer words, a different tone. I've been thinking about you. I miss our connection. I've changed. But if you look closely, you'll see it's the same pattern, just in a different costume. They don't miss you. They miss the supply, the attention, the control, because they know you gave them something no one else would. And now they're starving without it. But you're not the same. You've seen too much, felt too much, learned too much. And what once felt like love now feels like manipulation. What once made you feel needed now just feels like a trap. You might feel that pull, that urge to respond, to explain why you left, to remind them of how badly they hurt you, but you don't need to, because deep down, they already know. They just hope you forgot, hope you don't give in. Don't open that door. Don't let loneliness trick you into thinking what you had was real. Because if it was, they never would have made you feel like you were too much for asking for so little. So let them come back. Let them talk. Let them apologize. But remember, they're not sorry they hurt you. They're sorry they lost access to you. This is where most people mess up, right here, at the moment of return, because when they come back with soft words and sad eyes, something in you lights up. That old hope creeps in, that tiny voice that says, maybe this time it's real, but it's not. It's just the trap, because people like that don't change. They adjust. They say what they need to say to get back in, to reattach themselves to your life. And once they're in, the cycle starts all over again. That apology? It's not for you, it's for them, so they can feel better, so they can pretend they're not the villain in the story, and so they can say, see, I tried, but you've seen this movie before. You know how it ends. The pain you felt, that wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a choice. They chose to hurt you, chose to lie, chose to take advantage. And when you finally had enough, they didn't chase you. They waited until their supply ran out. And now that they're empty again, they remember you. But what they remember isn't who you are now. They remember the version of you that tolerated everything, that explained too much, that stayed too long. That version was useful to them. This version, you're dangerous now. Because now you see the pattern, now you recognize the game, and most importantly, now you love yourself enough to walk away and not look back. So don't go searching for closure. Don't reopen old wounds, hoping for a different ending. Closure doesn't come from their words. It comes from your decision. The decision to not let them back in, not even a little. You don't need another lesson. You don't need another scar. You already know who they are. And the more you ignore them now, the more they'll show the world what you already learned the hard way. So don't fall for the trap. Let them regret losing you on their own. And you just keep moving. You don't have to prove anything. Not to them, not to anyone. Because time is the great equalizer. It doesn't lie. It doesn't protect egos. It doesn't care about stories people spin to save face. Time reveals everything. You don't need to explain your side. You don't need to defend your silence. Just wait. The masks will slip. The lies will clash. The people they fooled, they'll start to see it too, because truth always surfaces. And when it does, it's louder than anything you could have said. See, people like that don't just betray you. They betray everyone. Eventually, they run out of people to use. Eventually, their patterns catch up to them. The bridges they burned, they don't rebuild. And the support they faked, it dries up. You'll hear about it, the stories, the chaos, the way things fell apart. But by then, you'll be so far removed, you won't even care. Because you learned the secret. They were never worth the fight. Let time do what it does best. It doesn't just expose them to others, it exposes them to themselves. That's the real punishment. Not your anger, not your revenge, just the empty space you left behind. A silence they can't fill, a peace they can't disturb. While they scramble, you rise. While they gossip, you grow. While they play victim, you heal. And one day, they'll look around and see what they lost. Not because you rubbed it in, but because time held up the mirror and they couldn't look away. By then, your silence won't just be an absence. It'll be a message. You're not coming back. Not because you're mad, not because you want them to hurt, but because you finally love yourself more than the pain they brought into your life. That's what time gives you: perspective, distance, clarity. And once you have that, you never go back. So what now? Do you keep waiting for them to understand? Keep hoping they'll wake up and realize what they lost? Keep holding space in your heart for someone who already showed you who they really are? Or do you finally let go? Because here's the truth. They're not losing sleep over you. They're not replaying the memories. They're not drowning in regret. The only thing they miss is control. And once that's gone, so is their interest. They don't miss you. They miss the version of themselves. They got to be around you. Powerful, important, needed. But now that they can't reach you, now that your silence has stripped away their influence, they're left with nothing but their own reflection. And that reflection, it's empty. You gave them your best, your loyalty, your love, your patience. You did everything you could, and they still chose to betray you, still chose to lie, still chose to take advantage. That wasn't your fault, but it is your responsibility to make sure it never happens again. You don't owe them another explanation. You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them access to your healing. Because the more you ignore them, the more they reveal themselves, not just to you, but to everyone. And in that silence, the truth spreads louder than any story they could ever tell. So move on, not to prove a point, not to make a statement, but because peace is more valuable than attention. Because healing is more powerful than revenge. Because freedom isn't found in getting even, it's found in letting go. And when they realize they can't reach you, can't shake you, can't control you anymore, that's when they'll feel it. That's when it'll hit them. Not the pain of losing someone they loved, but the pain of losing someone they used. And you'll be gone. Not bitter, not broken, just better. Because the more you ignore, the more they expose themselves. And that's the beauty of it. You never had to say a word.